Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into an explainer that is literally going to reframe how you look at your own potential. Just picture this for a second. Imagine two people. They're equally talented, right? They face the exact same challenges, the exact same setbacks, the same tough breaks in life. But down the line, only one of them ends up wildly successful. Why is that? What's the actual difference between these two people? It's the ultimate question, isn't it? We constantly ask ourselves, what really separates the wildly successful from everyone else who's kind of just getting by? What is that invisible separator? Now, you probably have a few guesses already forming in your head, but I'd bet good money they aren't what the data actually points to.
Because spoiler alert, it's not IQ, it's not about who you know or your fancy connections, and it's not even sheer discipline. Psychologists have spent decades digging into this, and they've pinpointed one highly specific foundational mindset that can almost definitively predict if someone will succeed or not. Just one. And once you train this mindset and actually use it to your advantage, it basically becomes your quiet, secret weapon.
Okay, let's dive into this. The concept is called the Locus of Control. It was introduced way back in the 1950s by psychologist Julian Rotter, and it basically describes exactly how you interpret the causes of events in your life. Think of it like a literal lens through which you view your wins, your losses, and, well, the whole shebang.
Moving on to Section 2, internal versus external control.
To really grasp why this is such a game changer, we have to compare these two distinct mindsets. If you naturally fall into an internal locus of control, you fundamentally believe you're responsible for your successes and your failures. You believe your actions matter. You hold the reins. But on the flip side, if you lean toward an external locus of control, you believe external forces, luck, fate, circumstances, or just other people, determine your outcomes. You basically feel like those external forces are pulling the strings. It sounds like a subtle difference, but honestly, it dictates your entire life trajectory. Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world. Say you fail an exam or totally blow a big presentation. Someone with an internal reaction looks at that failure and goes, "Oh man, I didn't study enough. I need to manage my time better." The weight is entirely on their shoulders. But the external reaction, that sounds more like, "This test was incredibly unfair, the room was freezing, the teacher clearly has a vendetta against me, and honestly, Mercury is probably in retrograde." See the difference? One mindset absolutely guarantees future growth and adaptation, while the other leads straight to blame, victimhood, and just being stuck.
All right, Section 3, the science of success.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, this just sounds like standard self-help motivation talk, but it's actually backed by hard science. Let's walk through this timeline. Julian Rotter's initial 1950s research showed that people with an internal locus performed better academically and just naturally had much higher motivation. Then by 1972, developmental psychologists found that young children with a stronger internal locus were vastly more persistent when they faced difficult puzzles or challenges. Fast forward to 2006, and researchers linked it to lower depression rates, a higher likelihood of following health recommendations, and literally stronger immune system responses. Crazy, right? Your mindset is actively impacting your physical health. But what's truly staggering here is the sheer scale of the evidence. Check out the results from this massive 20-year longitudinal study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Following humans for 2 decades is huge. The individuals who developed a strong internal locus of control in their early years ended up with higher incomes, noticeably better health outcomes, and remarkably stronger relationship quality later in life compared to the external locus folks. I mean, better health equals fewer sick days. Stronger relationships mean a rock-solid support system. The life advantages of taking control literally compound across every single metric imaginable. Which brings us to a somewhat uncomfortable truth. It's a brilliant psychological paradox, really. If you consistently believe that things are outside of your control, well, you end up being completely right. You stop trying, and you definitely won't be in control of your life. It becomes this devastating, self-fulfilling prophecy. But the flip side is also true. Believe you have control, and you instantly start looking for solutions. You put in the effort, you adapt, and that empowering belief actually becomes your reality. This whole phenomenon is exactly what Martin Seligman, the famous father of positive psychology, calls learned optimism. As Seligman points out, people who believe they have control recover so much faster from setbacks. Actually, they experience fewer setbacks overall because they are constantly adapting, learning, and moving forward. It creates this massive high-speed feedback loop. You take control, you get a small win, that builds a stronger belief in yourself, which ultimately drives you to take even bigger actions. Which leads us to Section 4, why growth is uncomfortable. So if this internal locus is basically a superpower that gets you better jobs, better health, and more money, why doesn't everyone just do it? Well, because taking control is deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Let's be real. It is totally easier to blame bad luck, a terrible boss, or a rigged system than it is to look in the mirror and admit, hey, I didn't try hard enough. Operating with an internal locus completely strips away all of your favorite, coziest excuses. It forces you to realize your exact role in your own failures. And that right there is the price of success. You have to take true, unfiltered ownership of those failures. You have to relentlessly examine the why behind your missteps. But crucially, and this is a big one, you have to do it without shame. Shame just makes us hide, but ownership makes us grow. You really have to get comfortable with feeling a little bit uncomfortable, because when you lean into that productive discomfort, you start unlocking areas of your life and your potential that you didn't even know were under your command. All right, section 5, 5 steps to take control.
So the absolute crucial point is, how do we actually flip the switch from external to internal? The sources outline a pretty amazing mastery playbook. Here is a screenshot-worthy checklist of 5 everyday moves you can make. Number 1, shift your language. Swap out "I have to do this" for "I choose to do this." It instantly reminds your brain who's actually in charge. Number 2, when things go horribly wrong, resist the urge to play the blame game and instead ask, what part of this can I control? Even if it's just your reaction. Number 3, celebrate cause and effect. When you study and ace a test, or hit the gym and feel amazing, pause for a second and acknowledge the direct connection between your effort and that win. Number 4, take responsibility without beating yourself up. Just take a breath and calmly say, that was on me, what's my next move? And number 5, surround yourself with proactive people. Mindsets are highly contagious, folks. If your circle takes initiative, you absolutely will too.
And finally, section 6, your new competitive edge. When you deploy these 5 steps consistently, you are granting yourself a massive, almost unfair advantage over the rest of the world. Because here's how the worldview breaks down. Most people operate in a totally reactive state. They sit around, they wait for things to happen to them, they wait to be chosen, they wait for permission. But by shifting your locus of control, you become fiercely proactive. You give yourself permission to make things happen. The people who take responsibility are always the ones who move the fastest and bounce back the strongest. This internal shift is the absolute foundation of every great comeback story you have ever heard. At the end of the day, developing an internal locus of control isn't just about achieving success. It is ultimately about freedom. It's about taking your power back from the absolute chaos of the world. So I want to leave you with a challenge for this very week. When something inevitably does not go as planned, before you complain, before you start looking around for someone or something to blame, stop and ask yourself, what part of this can I control? Act on that. Do it enough times and you won't just change your mindset, you'll change your entire life. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.